I'm going to be talking about primary non-specific defenses against disease, and these are they're described as non-specific as they will essentially prevent the entry of any pathogen into the body. They're not specific to one type of pathogen. They're just trying to keep everything out of the body. And so we're going to look at 5 major primary defenses, and these are going to be the skin, blood clotting, the mucous membrane, responses, so for example coughing or sneezing or whatever, and also the inflammatory response. So we'll look at these in order. So the first thing we need to just cover is the skin. So as you might imagine, the skin acts as the first primary defense, and it is essentially a barrier. And the first layer of the skin is made of these cells called the epidermis. And these consist of layers, and so the upper layer of the skin is called the epidermis, and these cells, this upper layer, the epidermis, and the cells are known as keratinocytes. Remember the protein keratin? Essentially what happens is these cells are produced at the base of the epidermis during mitosis, and then they migrate out of the surface of the skin. So they move up like this, and what happens is when they start coming out of the skin, they're dead, and essentially this process is called keratinization, and that's why people say your skin replaces about every 30 days, is because it takes about 30 days for the keratinocytes to migrate out of the skin, and after they've done so, they're dead and turn into keratin. The layer of dead skin, and this is the key point here, the dead skin layer actually acts as a barrier to pathogens. And this is quite a disgusting part, but that's biology for you. Much of the dust found in houses is actually dead skin, because when this is dead, it actually just falls off your skin. So this is the skin. This is probably one of the easier ones to understand. The next one I'm going to cover is probably coughing and sneezing, because this is probably the second most easiest part to understand. So let me just get over all of this here. Nice. Sneezing. And areas, and essentially what this is from irritation, from areas that are prone to attacks are very sensitive. For example, your nose, you have your nose hairs. In your throat, you have obviously your cilia. Sorry, not you have ciliated heal, and so forth. And this is this causes a sensitive effect, and the areas that are prone to attack respond to the irritation because of the toxins that they release. Become irritated because of toxins produced by pathogens. Now, and essentially the last part is just they obviously have reflexes, and this is coughing, sneezing, just even vomiting, I guess, to an extent. All it is to try and expel the organism from your body. That's what it is. So the next part we're going to discuss is the blood clotting. Oh, sorry, that's a little teaser of what I'm going to cover next. But blood clotting. So we've gone through skin, and we've gone through coughing and sneezing. But what about blood clotting? Let's look at blood clotting very quickly here. Just get rid of all of this. Nice. Okay. Right. Not sure what's blood clotting. So essentially what happens is when the skin is damaged and open to body infection, the body has to prevent certain things from happening, and those certain things are blood loss. It has to prevent infection, and it also has to repair the skin. And so the body's developed this system, blood clotting and skin repair, that actually helps prevent pathogens entering the body, and then repairs the skin. So there is a quite nasty diagram that we have to learn for this, and so I think I'm going to go over this first. So it's almost like a plotting out a computer algorithm. If you guys have ever done GCSE computer science, a flow diagram. So essentially, the first step, what happens is we have the exposing skin. So damage to the skin in some way, exposing the blood vessel. Sorry, damage to skin, exposing blood vessel. And two things can happen from here. We're actually going to do this in the opposite direction, just so I don't run into that picture that I've drawn over there. So, first thing that can happen is a temporary platelet plug is formed. So platelets in the blood come rushing over to this damaged part of the skin to try and plug the hole, essentially. So we'll call these steps steps 2. We'll just call this step 2 and this also step 2. So what first happens is platelets bind to collagen in the blood and release clotting factors. Collagen in blood to release clotting factors. And looking back at this, it's probably a better idea if I drew it all out to make it more visually pleasing. So I'll draw little diagrams for each of them maybe. So here we have some damage to the skin. This is the skin here, and we have a little. We had a little vein running by here, and this has been exposed, and it's now bleeding out, and so platelets in the blood combine. Let's see if my pen decides to select here. Well, thank you very much. To bind with some collagen to produce some clotting factors, and these whilst the clotting factor process continues, in the meantime we can have a temporary platelet plug where the platelets will rush to the exposed site and they try and fill the plug. Now, these two factors here will come to the same thing, and that is the activation of thrombokinase. I can never pronounce that enzyme, and activate thrombinase enzyme such, and this will react with calcium and also prothrombin in the blood to try and activate another enzyme that's going to try and help create some fibrin. So, and one more step here to note is this just to form part of the clot. Then we have the enzyme activated, and we'll draw some prothrombin in blood and some calcium ions. These all combine to activate the thrombin enzyme. Part 3. And so as this is activated, this will turn the soluble fibrinogen in the plasma into insoluble fibrin. So this is what this enzyme is used for in the blood. It's to create insoluble fibrin. And essentially this fibrin will attach to platelets in the plug to reinforce the plug. And so also is needed for that is the soluble fibrinogen. And this is actually in the plasma. Okay. And these then attach, let's reinforce platelet plug, and thus we have our fully formed clot. And it's quite complicated to remember this. It's useful to just remember it in a cycle. Damage to skin, what's this? Platelets, but then we also have to think about the enzyme thrombinase, thrombokinase, and you have to keep thinking in steps. So there's 2 pathways, and for each pathway 1, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Whereas for pathway 2, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps. And if you can remember it like that and in different steps, I think it becomes a lot easier to remember. So the next part of this we're going to look at is the mucous membrane, which is quite exciting because this is what I've drawn right here. This took me probably, actually it didn't take me too long. So I'm just going to label this first, and then I'll go over this in a few details. So this is mucus here. This is mucus produced by goblet cells, and then we also have secretory glands, but these just basically secrete mucus. And something I did actually forget are these little hair things on this epidermis here. And they all have nucleuses, whatever. But this is actually cilia, and this helps to keep the mucus moving. And essentially what happens is bacteria becomes trapped in the mucus, and then the cilia waft the mucus away. So you might remember this from maybe topic 3 in about the lungs. But what really happens, say for example this is a scenario in the trachea, maybe. Some particles are trapped in the mucus, and then the cilia are used to waft the mucus to the back of the throat to be swallowed. And essentially what happens is this mucus goes down into the stomach. So say it's been moved over here and it's been swallowed, and it goes into the stomach. Lovely stomach I'm drawing here, and here we have hydrochloric acid, which has a pH of about 1 to 2. And so when in there, the hydrochloric acid is going to actually kill most of the bacteria or the pathogen, let's say. Now, the last thing I wanted to look at in this video would be the inflammatory response. Let's go over here and look at it. Over here, inflammatory response. And really what happens here is that when signs that a tissue is infected, you usually see some swelling and redness, and this is known as inflammation. inflammation. And we're just going to understand what it means by that, how this has come about. So we should note that the presence of microorganisms in the tissue is detected by specialized cells called mast cells. So let's write some steps out here. So microorganisms detected by mast cells. And from there, these cells release a substance called histamine. Histamine released. And this histamine, it has a wide range of effects on the surrounding tissue, but it essentially is used to help combat the infection. And the main effect of this histamine is actually vasodilation, which GCSE PE people, you would know this, but it's used to make, and basically vasodilation is when capillary walls vasodilation causes blood vessels to dilate, which causes around the infected area, which means more blood, which dilate, remember, is get bigger, constrict is get smaller. Vasodilate, vasoconstriction. Constrict, dilate. So we'll write vasodilation. And this causes more blood to rush to the area of infection. And this histamine also makes the capillary walls more permeable to white blood cells. To white blood cells, which is very useful if you think about it, because what type of blood cells are you going to need most on a site of infection? Yeah, white blood cells. So essentially, the swelling is caused by blood plasma and phagocytic white blood cells leave the blood and enter tissue fluid, which causes an increased production of tissue fluid, which essentially causes the swelling. So this increased production of tissue fluid causes a swelling around the sign of infection. And obviously, excess tissue fluid will probably be drained into the lymphatic system, causing the pathogens to be drained into a system which is completely filled with white blood cells. And this will initiate the specific immune responses, which we will get onto in the next video. Actually, the video after the next video, because the next video I'm just going to talk about secondary non-specific defenses, and then the video after that we will go into immune responses. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Sorry I didn't really use too many diagrams, so some of it may be a little confusing, but either way, hopefully I provided some decent insight into the topic. Thank you for watching.